Hello and welcome to Unacademy. I welcome you to this session in which we'll try to understand the trend of questions which have come from history in the mains examination. And we'll be covering close to 11 years and what are the type of questions which are coming through, how many questions are coming, what areas you should actually focus on. Now, before we begin, remember that the 19999 offer is back with 12 months extension. Please do use the code IAS English because if you use this code, you will be attributed to our team and our mentors, and therefore it is important that you use this code. Further, if you want the PPT for this session, you'll find it in this Telegram channel. Just scan this and join it. And for the purpose of mains and for anybody who's starting their preparation, we are also conducting a session on 25th June at 8 p.m. on world history, and that too specifically on the world wars. Previously, I have done one session in which I've done all the revolutions, which is French Revolution, Industrial Revolution, and American Revolution. This session is on the world wars, interwar period. We'll start around 1850s and we'll go on till 1945 and cover everything related to. A lot of questions come out of this area also, as I will show you. This is where UPSC has started to focus. So we'll talk about that in the larger scheme of things. Now, when we talk about GS paper 1 and history, you first have to understand that there are 6 components to history. One is ancient, the other one is medieval, then you have modern, then you have art and culture, then you have world history, and post independent. Now, ancient medieval are prelims only with anomaly of 2 questions which have come. They are basically society and history questions, not per se of ancient. Modern art and culture is mains plus prelims, and world history and post independence is mains only. And therefore, you have to prepare accordingly. You have to prepare for modern and art and culture, both descriptive and factual. Here, more factual, conceptual, less descriptive, and more descriptive here. If you've been struggling to find a source in which you can get ancient, medieval, modern, art and culture, and early medieval together, you can always refer to courseware on Indian history. It has all the 5 themes written by me and McGraw Hill Publications. In this, you have ancient medieval, early medieval, modern, art and culture, both prelims and mains orientation. You'll find all of these aspects in one book itself. This is your Lakshmikant for history. This is your one-stop solution. For the source, I'm already telling you, you can use this as a source. You'll find it on Amazon and Flipkart. Now, based on this, let's look at the syllabus. What does the syllabus say? And when we talk about the syllabus, we have for the first time a little bit of precision. This is where in prelims, UPSC keeps it open-ended. On the other hand, in mains, they become a little bit more specific. And when they become specific, these are the aspects which they have pointed out. Indian culture, art forms, literature, architecture from ancient to modern times. Modern history from 18th century till present. Freedom struggle is specifically mentioned. Post independence, consolidation, and reorganization. 2 words very important: consolidation and reorganization. And thereafter, history of the world, including events from 18th century, such as Industrial Revolution, World Wars. This is unification of Germany and Italy, colonization, decolonization, and political philosophy. That is why revolutions have already covered in one marathon. When we talk about world wars, we are going to cover that in the marathon, which is lined up for 25th. Now, if you look at it, it is very precise what they want. Here, they've given us a 18th century understanding. Here again, they've written a 18th century. Art forms, literature, architecture directly mentioned. And freedom struggle, important contributions, and different parts of country again mentioned. This is where we get this understanding that modern art and culture, world and post independence is important and mains only. There's no mention of ancient and medieval directly. But where ancient medieval is important is if you have to do art and culture is not random. It is not in thin air. It is grounded in ancient and medieval. And therefore, if you have never covered ancient medieval, you are going to struggle with art and culture. That is why in the courseware, what I've done is I've added the art and culture part of that period into the chapter itself, rather than having it in a approach where this is disjuncted or discontinuity is there. But do understand one thing: basic. Who is Mahendra Varman? Who are the Pallavas? Who are the Cholas? When does Gupta period align with the Cholas? Where is Chola period? When is the Gupta period? The idea is if you don't know the timeline of ancient and medieval, who are Delhi Sultans or what is Mughal architecture, who are the Mughals, you will never be able to write good answers for art and culture. So ancient medieval has to be covered. Please don't follow anybody who's saying, so-called experts who will say that leave ancient medieval, just do these two because the ROI is very, very good. Return on investment is very, very good. But what is going to happen is you will start to struggle in art and culture. Books such as Nitin Singhania will stop making sense generally. Because if you don't know art and culture in the way it should be grounded in ancient and medieval, you will never be able to get good marks or you will never write good answers. So, as much as there are six components, they are connected because it's one larger timeline. So I hope that you will listen to this advice and at least try to create familiarity with ancient and medieval syllabus so that your art and culture is sorted. Now, the second thing which students look for, and that is the whole point of this session, is trend analysis. How many questions are coming from which area? Where should we focus? What should be our main understanding based area where we can actually fetch maximum marks? Now, with regards to modern India, the number of questions has been fluctuating in GS paper 1 and has now got more or less, you can say it's stabilized at two questions which we saw in 2020, 2021, 22, 23, 24, two questions, because art and culture questions have increased a little bit. In 2019 we did not have any question from modern India. It was more oriented world and post independence, but we have seen as high as 5 questions come out in 2017. So please do understand this, that we can get 5 to 2 questions out of modern India specifically. Modern India more or less has stabilized at 2 for the past at least 4 5 years, and we can go as high as 5 from modern India. So we are expecting 2 to 5 questions from modern India, and if I take it at an average of 10 marks or 15 marks, you are getting 20 to 30 marks questions out of this area. Very, very important. And if you have a good understanding, you can easily get out of these 20 or 30, you can easily get 12 to, you can say, 18, 20, 22 marks according to your understanding. Meaning, on an average, if you're getting 50% here and 50% here, which is standard marking, you'll be easily able to get good marks in GS paper 1. If I add to it the number of questions from art and culture has been fluctuating. Again, it has become standard and has become constant in the past 3 years, 2 to 2 questions. Some places you will find here written 3, some here also 3, but do understand those are not questions of art and culture per se, they're questions of ancient plus society, which I will show you. But in 2020 we had 4 questions. So here again we are expecting 2 to 4 questions, again 20 to 30 marks from this area. So let's be very clear. If I take into consideration modern plus art and culture, I am expecting 4 to 8 questions. And therefore, my 40 marks minimum are locked into history. And therefore, nobody is getting a good rank without acing these 4 to 8 questions. So my 40 to 80 marks are now locked into modern India and art and culture. These two are critical beyond exception. Very, very, very important for the larger scheme of things. Please, you cannot ignore art and culture, and therefore ancient and medieval, cannot ignore modern India. Now, when we talk about post independence and world history have a pattern, which is they started on a high of 4 questions 10 years back. Thereafter, you are getting 0 to 1 question. For example, in 2022 and 2021, we had one question, but for the past 2 years, we have no. So, therefore, in 2025, there's a chance that we get one question. But 0 to 1 question, 10 to 15 marks is here. Now, that is a indicator that, or it's an important indicator that you can't leave post independence. The amount of effort which is needed, which we push in, which is 5 to 6 classes, areas which I'll tell you which to concentrate on, it is good enough, and it is, you can say, you have to be secure that you at least are doing reorganization, linguistic reorganization, and you're doing the concept of princely state reintegration, so that your 10 to 15 marks is sorted. You can't just leave post independence. That would again be problematic. Same story we see in world history. So at the high of 4 questions, see for example 5 and 4, 9 questions at that given point of time. We have had again 0 to 1 questions come out of world history. We had a question in 2024, 2025. They can give you a question, but looking at this pattern, it can either break the pattern or follow the pattern of having 0 0 question. Again, for this, you can just refer to the 2 marathons which I have conducted, and you will be easily able to answer any one question which is coming out. I will tell you the areas which to concentrate on also. Now, if I take the whole pattern together, you have to also take into consideration 2 questions, one each in 2023 and 2024, which have come out of Vedic age. These questions are about Rig Vedic, later Vedic, the concept of economy and society, comparative perspective. It's a question of history plus the concept of society. I have accounted for this here, which is we've had one question here, one question here, and therefore the total number of questions, you have one and one here, total number of questions from the high of 15 in 2013, we have had a pattern where it became constant at 11, then has now become constant at 7. 7 questions into 10 or into 15, if I take into consideration, at least 70 to 90 marks of GS paper 1 are locked into history. And that is where you can see you can have modern plus art and culture plus one question from society plus history. But that pattern can again change. They can reduce the question from modern India and add one question from world history. That is why world history post independence, you can see it is changing according to one question taken away from modern given to the, the world history or post independence sector. In 2019, we have again that understanding that it can fluctuate. It can fluctuate. So please do understand one thing very clearly. If this trend analysis is just to give you one understanding and very simple understanding, which is that at least 5 to 7 questions you are expecting. That too in this modern history and art and culture is a constant. However, world history and post independence can either take from here or from here, but they can come in, and this is where those 10 to 15 marks can actually be very, very important and actually be very decisive to clear this examination and get a good rank, at least to reach till interview stage itself. Now, what we've understood till this point is what is the syllabus. Understood the trend also. Now, what we have to understand is what is the pattern of questions and what are the areas, what are the areas to. And this is where, let's start with modern India. Now, in modern India, three areas you cannot ignore looking at the number of questions. First is economic history, second is national movement. These two areas, majority of the questions are coming from this. For example, in 2024, we had the question of how deindustrialization is linked to industrial revolution. Then we had famines, why did they increase? Then we had the concept of again deindustrialization. And then we had a very, you can say, encompassing question on how did the British loot India or what were the economic policies. These questions are very simple, conceptual, very good because they're not asking you factual aspects. This is where at least one question from economic history comes through. It is equally important for prelims. So make sure that your understanding of economic history is sorted. Thereafter, when we talk about the national movement, in the national movement, we have two parts. Between 1857 to 1950, we are getting less questions. But from 1915, Gandhian phase till India gets independence, we are getting majority of the question. Now, where we have one on moderates, we have one on Swadeshi movement, and we again have on moderates. So somehow moderates have come twice and one on Swadeshi out of this section. 1857 itself has two questions in the past 10 years, but the majority of the questions are coming out of 1915 to 47. That to 1920 to 1930 is considered to be a very important phase. Two to three questions in different ways. For example, see, Quit India came in 2024. Then Gandhi and Tagore. This is where we have a, you can say, comparative perspective. Gandhi and Bose has also come previously. Gandhi and Dr. Ambedkar has also come previously. So we have seen three personalities come through. Then non-cooperation civil disobedience, 1920s again same period. And thereafter, you can say nationalist movement, Gandhian phase, many voices. This is also 1920s question. This is also 1920s question. This is also 1920s, 30s questions. Thereafter, the transfer of power issue. So we have now one question on partition. Then, if you look at the question pattern, significance of Gandhi's ideas, importance of the concept of independence, its vision, and how it matured in these periods in that regard. Then, role of women, Bose and Gandhi, Gandhi's achievements, and RIN mutiny. So one thing is very clear. Gandhian phase is very, very important because questions between 1915 to 1940 is coming. So if I go by this pattern, I've been able to identify four very important areas. First is national movement, 1915 to 1947. This is in gradation of importance. Then a national movement, because this is directly mentioned in the syllabus, it will come also. 1857 to 1915. Here we have the majority of the questions. Then lower here. Then we can expect one question random from the 1857 revolt. Two questions have come out of this area. Then if I have to make this in gradation of understanding, then I'll keep economic history here. And thereafter, I will keep 1857 revolt. Then we have personalities comparison question. UPSC has recently also started to add the aspect of 18th century and East India Company edge over regional powers plus the concept of what is called today as advent of Europe. So any question which we can see in the past 10 years is revolving around in these areas. So you should concentrate here for sure. Your concentration in this area has to be first. This is your first priority. Then you can do anything else you want. A lot of students also socio-religious reform. Again, got two questions out of it. So it is equally important as revolt. This is where you're getting causes and certain organization standard. So national movement, economic history, 1807, personalities, social reform movement, 18th century, and East India Company, how it dominated over regional powers, how it dominated over other European powers. One more thing which has come through recently is tribal revolts. But only one question in that regard. So you can refer to this to concentrate on certain areas which you need to prepare. In the courseware, all the questions are divided according to chapter and all have video explanation. Now, so modern India, we've been able to understand the larger trend. We understand it. When we talk about world history, here we are getting 0 to 1 question. And we've seen a shift, which is we used to previously get a lot of questions from decolonization and colonization. And that too specifically from the African decolonization and colonization used to be a very important between 2013 to 2020, I would say 2016, 2017. This was the pattern. However, now UPSC's moved away from that area. First, they went for American Revolution. But if you look at these questions, and along with this, these two are indicative of the fact that World War One, interwar period, and World War Two are now becoming more and more important. This is a question on railways. If you really want to refer to something like this, I've written an article on this, how Indian, Chinese, and other British railways are compared. But this is a question where you have to bring in a little bit of current affairs. But looking at this pattern, and because in the GS paper 2, we got a question on Gorbachev, which again is a personality of the Cold War politics. So therefore, this period is becoming important. That is why the session which I've lined up for tomorrow is critical for you. World wars have now become very, very important. If we really have to concentrate on something, we will concentrate on the revolutions or the world wars. The return on investment is good. Thereafter, let's talk about art and culture. Art and culture, we're getting 5 questions. And UPSC previously used to ask questions on architecture, used to ask question on techniques, sculpture. Now UPSC has moved away from this to what is called as period specific history. That is why you have to have an understanding of the period. For example, see, Pallavas, what is their contribution? Cholas, what is their contribution? Gupta Chola, what is their contribution? So if Pala, what is their contribution? Chola, what is their contribution? You see Chola 3 times, Gupta once, Pallavas again, Chola, Pallava, Gupta, 3 very important areas. They can easily ask you question on Mauryas, Indo-Greeks, Kushanas, Hoysalas, Kakatiyas. The idea is very simple. They are now moving away from questions where they were asking about temple sculpture or the Greco-Roman features of the Gandhara school of art. Though Nagara, Dravida, Vesara, along with painting tradition, along with Gandhara, Mathura, Amravati remain relevant, now they're asking overarching questions. So based on the trend which we see now, it is now the overarching trend to basically go for period specific questions. So in art and culture, what we see is that in art and culture, the analysis would be for world history, we've analyzed World War One, World War Two, Cold War, and thereafter also the revolutions. In art and culture, period specific history, Maurya, post Maurya, Gupta, the post Gupta period in which we have the Pallava, the Chalukyas, and thereafter early medieval, where we have the Cholas itself. And when we talk about Delhi Sultan or Sultanate, the contribution of Delhi Sultans, Mughal rulers, architectural. This is where the pattern is going toward. Previously, we also had questions on architecture. The architecture will come because it is mentioned in the examination syllabus itself. Literature again can come, and we have seen questions on Persian and Chinese sources. One question came here, one question came here. We have also seen questions on foreign travelers. So if I had to concentrate on, I would concentrate on foreign travelers, literature, architecture, period specific history. Along with that, you can also add Indus Valley civilization, Buddhism, Jainism. Indus Valley civilization, Buddhism, and Jainism, important areas. Cannot ignore this whole set in that regard. You have to make sure that your ancient medieval is good enough to write very good answers for art and culture. Then, when we talk about post independence, the basic pattern is linguistic reorganization. You have 1 0 to 1 questions. You have linguistic reorganization and reorganization generally. Reorganization would mean from, see, because they're referring to periods above and beyond post independence. So you can take into consideration from 1860 till 2014, 2020, 21, all four phases of reorganization: linguistic, tribal, regional disparity based, and thereafter national security. This is one area which you cannot ignore. Second, official language controversy, and language remains important because language and linguistic issues mar the current affairs also, and India also has one of these tensions based on linguistics. Third, which is, if you can see here, and if you look at the larger pattern, is princely state reintegration. This is one where the contribution of the Iron Man of India, along with that, how Patel and and Menon tried to integrate, and this idea of new state, small state is again part of the concept of reorganization only. So if I had to put in a little bit of effort, I would put in effort into reorganization, linguistic reorganization specifically. The committee is there, be it JVP, be it her, or be it Fazal Ali. And I would also put in a little bit of effort into what were the strategies which Patel followed in order to reintegrate 565. I would concentrate on Kashmir, Junagadh, Hyderabad, and how or what was the strategy to bring them in, what were the challenges. A challenge based question has come through, but you will see mostly these are the type of questions which will come in the post independence questions. So if I take into consideration everything, modern, I'm expecting questions out of, based on trend, national movement, socialist reform movement, tribal peasant, revolt of 1807, economic history. They can break the pattern. They are doing that through the concept of advent of Europeans, East India Company history also. In art and culture, the expectation is to go for period specific, symbolism specific. What is the importance of the lion? What is the importance of the bull? Which is again period specific in that regard. And we can see overarching questions on techniques. For post independence, it has to be reorganization and has to be linked, and the concept of reintegration of princely states. For world history, we have to concentrate on all the revolutions and the world wars. And for ancient and medieval, for ancient, I would say that you have to know Vedic period, its repercussions, how all social evils came out in the later Vedic period, society based understanding where caste and varna comes through. And in art and culture, we also saw one anomaly question, which is science and technology of Delhi Sultanate. Science and technology of ancient and medieval India is a chapter which is very well covered, but again, they went for Delhi Sultanate. So, if you can concentrate on these areas, you will be able to easily get those 3 to 5 questions, and you will be able to secure your 30 to 50 marks. And in this, 50% to 60% is what the examiner will give you. This will make sure that your GS paper 1 is sorted. Other than geography and society, history numbers can go up and down. Looking at the pattern of 2024, we expect questions from non-cooperation or from the areas related to social reform movement, because that is how prelims was asked, but you never know with UPSC. So on this note, I will end this session. I hope in the past half an hour you were able to understand what are the number of questions, what is the pattern, what is the type of questions which are coming through. Some dynamic because of current affairs, but if you look at it, it's mostly static questions. Cannot ignore modern India and art and culture. Thank you.